There's always another player who finds a bug in your code, and then you have to spend a lot of time fixing it.
When a patch first goes to PTU, we get a lot of interesting reactions from players.
I think we always fear that we're missing some obvious use case that players want in a game.
We always kind of expect a lot of kind of mixed kind of feedback with that.
I mean, ultimately, what we want to see and what we always hope is that the experience has improved.
The most challenging aspect to managing player feedback is taking all of that passion and energy and transforming that into something that designers can use and action on.
So a big learning process for us is just how we kind of read the community feedback and how we kind of filter that through to make sure we're delivering the changes the community wants, because the community may say that they want things a certain way, but they might get hung up on how they want us to do it.
When a build first hits PTU, it's usually not in a fully complete state. We often hold a little bit back so that we can get a little player input on some of the new features and then iterate from there.
The benefits of the PTU kind of lasting us, kind of as long as it has done this time, is we've been able to kind of polish a lot of the experience side for us. So we've been able to kind of retune some of the ships, based on some feedback, just some edge cases that we perhaps wouldn't have spotted otherwise.
Balancing every ship from the get-go perfectly is frankly impossible. We need feedback, and there's a difference between our internal QA playing everything or thousands of players.
A lot of people think that PTU is just for bug reporting and talking about bugs, but it can also be a proving ground for design ideas and design concepts where we can take player feedback and incorporate that moving forward.
So if we've got an idea or a way of tuning or a way of communicating something, we can put it out there and kind of try it with the PTU audience before it hits the wider kind of group.
Turrets, for example, have been completely redone, right? A thing, though, that more PvP-focused players told us is that they actually need that kind of detail back that the old targeting system had. So we took that into account and then just fleshed out the whole new binding scheme that we have now. While you do have now context-sensitive controls that automatically pick the right target that you probably want to target, you have a whole slew of new keys that you can iterate forth and back.
So, and this kind of quick progress allowed us to put a lot of effort into how we made the UI for the turrets. So we quickly moved from kind of programmer UI, which Yogi did, to actually proper kind of, art-driven UI. And we're really happy with the result. Fair to say that atmospheric flight's in a much better place after the PTU kind of period of feedback. We're able to go back in and kind of retune a lot of the kind of different things to do with ships, and also just learn where the kind of feeling was with the community on some of the negatives were built into the aerodynamics.
Aerodynamics is a huge step for ships, like really, really big, and they completely affect the way how ships are controlled in the atmosphere.
That was kind of a really critical part of development for us. So it's definitely in a much better place now.
In this patch, we added jerk.
And this is something we worked with the PTU players kind of to tune, because we went quite short. It was a new feature, and it was something that's always going to kind of degrade the performance of the ship. But of course, on the lighter fighters, when it comes to combat, we didn't want it to be a dominant factor in the combat. We wanted players to feel it, but not be too dominant. So we put it out there with some base values that we felt were good enough.
But players let us know that came with some drawbacks that we needed to adjust.
It turns out we got the linear accelerations pretty much spot on, but we didn't get the angular accelerations kind of right with jerk. So we put some new values out there kind of midway through the PTU phase. And basically since then we've heard a lot less about the jerk.
My personal feeling is that these changes were quite well received, because they represent a pretty good step towards where we want to go.
So as far as 310 going towards a PU, my hope is that the kind of positive feelings kind of filter through to the kind of wider audience, because it can always change. I mean, we've got different kind of groups of people that play the game, but we don't really fully know until it goes out there to the full player base, and that's what really matters for us.
Like, obviously we cannot do groundbreaking changes or really big Like, we cannot fix the whole game at once, right? But we always hope to see threads like, hey guys, my experience has improved, and thank you for that, right? So we know that we're on the right track.
The players who tested this build during Evocati and during PTU absolutely made this patch much better for some of these really complex systems, from tuning jerk to make it so that we have more control over the ships, to balancing turrets around so that you have cleaner control, to making atmospheric flight behave a little bit better in the wind, even big ships being able to take off, to getting our keybinds correct and concise in a way that's presentable, lots and lots of stuff.
If there's one thing that this extended PTU process has taught us, is that there's often no substitute for putting a new feature into the hands of our backers and letting them kick the tires and light the fires, as they say, to make everything just a little bit better. Now, oh, you noticed my new friend, did you? Well, this is Pico the penguin, adorable ambassador to New Babbage, loves carving powder on the snowy slopes of Microtech, and warming hearts across the galaxy. And while supplies last, you can take home your very own Pico for as many plushy, penguiny hugs as you can handle. Comes complete with snowboard, adorable backpack, and removable helmet, but please, safety first. Just check out the robertspaceindustries.com website for details and availability. And wait, what's that, Pico? Enough of the shameless plug and shilling. You say it's time for a sprint report. Well, who am I to argue? Let's get to it. Let's start things off with another look at the continuing development of cargo decks, the new additions to space stations scheduled to come online in the upcoming 311. And we've been able to follow the progress of these new station modules for some time thanks to staggered development. But if this is your first look, cargo decks are intended to provide a place for the storing and transfer of goods for both players and NPCs alike. You'll find them along major trade routes or Lagrange points and in geostationary orbit above major landing zones, as they perform as both commercial harbors and warehouses for all major trade goods in the verse. As they continue to develop for 311 and beyond, they'll provide a range of cargo and trade-related missions, trade security missions, your chance to interact with and gain rank with the Cargo Guild, your chance to find rentals, and if you've ever worked in a warehouse or big box store before like I have, maybe a few secreted areas only employees on their breaks are supposed to know about. In FPS Weapons, we've got a quick look at the AO3 ballistic sniper rifle, which just looks darn cool. Now, after recent work we covered earlier this quarter on the development of a balance triangle for all FPS weapons, we now know that Gemini weapons target accuracy and speed as their strong suits. They're more like marksman weapons than something super hard-hitting. But if you'd rather quantity of bullets over precision, these concepts for Bearing's new FS9 light machine gun has a stylish look that says, I have a whole lot of bullets. Don't give me a reason to give them to you. Is Bearing supposed to look this mean? Additionally, the wear and tear system enabled by the new hard surface shader is now beginning to be applied to existing weapons like this rocket launcher from Apocalypse Arms and this tried and true Gemini SMG, both using a workflow of curvature, wear, dirt, blend maps, and maskings to achieve their results. In Squadron 42 news, there's this. Now, I'm not going to tell you what it is, or who it's for, or how many poor UEE service folk it's killed. But whatever the story there, it sure looks mean. Work continues bringing the new runtime probes and day-night light cycles to existing locations throughout Stanton, like the Area 18 Plaza seen here. Now, instead of all the lights being on all the time like they used to be, lighting artists are now going through and crafting two distinct palettes for the plaza between day and night. Now, we don't think they're quite there just yet, but it was an effective sprint and the team's having a lot of fun developing these new looks. We've also been following along with the development of fire hazard and propagation for Squadron 42 and Star Citizen, and we're back for another hot update. As discussed, this is a two-part exploration of both voxel and entity-based solutions that will be blended together to enable dynamic propagation between the two. What you're seeing here is a system that tracks the temperature, fuel amount, fire and smoke intensities to create an ignition using placeholder particles for the moment that can spawn directly from the surface of an item and then envelop it. Poor utility cart. Now, once that milestone was hit, the team then went to work actually blending the two solutions together for true entity to voxel propagation. You can see here our poor flaming cart, the entity, being dragged around this basic ship interior, igniting the surrounding voxels in flame. Now, to say that the number of teams here are excited about the gameplay possibilities of this would be an understatement. One day, fire extinguishers in the verse may be good for more than just getting a single kill in theaters of war. It happened. Look it up. You can also see here the tech has progressed to allow for the reverse voxel to entity propagation. And then, of course, entity to entity propagation. Up next for the team, working on various extinguishing methods, including chemical propellant, loss of atmosphere, and more. Members from our environment team focused on organics are currently exploring new ways to get increasingly realistic surface coverage of things like grass or meadows using our new paint tools, which seems simple until we remember that it has to be applied at a planetary scale while still reacting to smaller things like wind, vehicles, and players alike. What we're seeing here is a test for visual fidelity only, without the touch blending that would cause it to bend when you crawl through it like this player is. That touch blending pipeline is also under development, and you can bet we'll have updates when the time comes. In ship updates, we've got a new look at the Origin 100i, which has begun final art stage. You can see here the external cargo bay found in the 135 variant, the beginnings of a cockpit interior with its yoke and control scheme, folks getting started on the landing gear and testing the compression because these ships like to hang close to the ground, and then the beginnings of a materials pass on the exterior. We've also got this look at the gray box interior and initial materials pass for the Hercules Star Lifter from Crusader Industries. A couple disclaimers about what you're going to see here. This is a big ship with a lot of space left to fill. But these areas you see here are an indication of the general look and feel being explored for the interiors. And before you go and fire the janitor, these images were taken in the middle of a wear and tear materials pass. It probably won't be this dirty when it makes its way into the Star Citizen universe. Pico wouldn't allow it. For an interior that's a fair bit cleaner at the moment, here's a sneak peek inside the Crusader Industries Mercury Star Runner. Now, like the brochure says, if you need it there fast and unscathed, you can't do better than a Mercury. Highlights here include the rec room, scanning room, the foyer, gotta love a good foyer, and the cockpit. So what did we learn about this week? Well, we learned that fire is on its way to becoming serious business in the persisting universe. That Crusader is well on its way to developing a visual flair on the interior that rivals its stylish exteriors. And we're reminded that testing environments like Evocati, PTU, and even Alpha are often for testing ideas and not just finding bugs. And that the pleasing presence of Pico the Penguin purports positive perceptions of persons and pride. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee, and we'll see you next week.
It's Pico, he's a radical star. Down the microtech slopes, he shreds the gnar. It's Pico, he's your new best friend. He'll be your penguiny bud until the end.